it's Amanda here from Lolli Lulu Crafts, and today we are going to be making this gorgeous 12 by 12 Cricut Disney Frozen, I was going to say card, but it was a birthday card, but being such a large piece, it's really ended up being more a wall hanging stroke picture. So let's get cracking with making the project. So I made this project on my Cricut Explore, and we're here on the design space for iPad, and as you can see, this is the finished design, and I didn't actually film every step. It would have been quite difficult to do. There were quite a lot of layers and intricacies to it, but it wasn't actually very difficult to do. It just was time consuming. So separately to my Cricut Disney Frozen images, I actually had a frozen background paper pad, so I wanted to use one of those images in this design. So in order to make sure that everything fitted around it correctly, I photographed that image, sized it up correctly, and then I imported it into Design Space by using the upload image button. So you just click on that like so. Now you can see the actual image is already there, but all you need to do if you haven't done this before is you just click on the upload image button there, and you can see and that takes you to your page there where it says browse, or you can drag and drop. So then you click on browse and you can then choose an image from your computer. So in this case it was the photograph of the Disney Frozen. Now just for the purposes of the example that we're doing here, I'm just going to pick a little image of my cute little Daisy May here when she was a pup, but it doesn't really matter. Obviously you're just gonna, it doesn't matter what image it is, but the principle is the same. So you just pick whatever image it is that you want to import, and then you click on that image, click open. It then asks you whether you want it to be a simple image, moderately complex, or complex image. That really is up to you. I probably usually go for moderately, but in this instance, just for some reason, I just clicked on complex. But anyway, I guess the less complex you need it, the better. And then once that's imported, you just click OK and you're ready to go. And then you can click on that image to down there, and that'll import it into your page itself. So you just double click and it will pop it onto your design mat, I suppose is what I mean. So once that was done, that enabled me to work around that and see what pieces fitted and how they fitted. Now for example, in the Cricut cartridge there was the actual mountain there, and there was an element there, a layer, which I was able to size correctly so that I could decoupage it over the background image. So that was kind of cool. Then I wanted to create a piece with this aperture in order to see the image through that aperture. So to do this, I just created a square. So I just took the image there, and just you can create your square. Now I obviously sized it to whatever size, I created the right color, and then I took, actually in this case I just, for this example, I've just taken a circle out of the shapes, but for my actual design here I took a nice label and I used that. Now I'm just changing the colour of that so we can see it, and then resizing it. So you can see that the circle is over the top of my square. I'm encasing both of them so that both elements are highlighted, and then you just click on slice, and the circle is then sliced, in this case a circle, from the square to create the aperture. Next we go to the back of the project, where I wanted to create like a little stand that you get, say, on the back of the photographs, where the sort of V shape, one part is folded on the angle and the other part, the straight part, is the cut, and it pops out to create this little stand. Now it's actually very simple to do. You just take the line from your shapes section and you draw a line, and then you go across to that line in your design elements and change it to a cut line, or a score line, depending on which part it is. Now obviously for the straight up and down bit you want a cut line, and for the diagonal part you want a score line. And then the final bit I just want to show you is how to just be more economical with your paper. If you go to the colour sync section, you can drag the different elements, as you see I am here, to other elements. So for example, if you've got two pale blues that are pretty similar, you might just think, well, I may as well make that the same paper and drag one into the other, so that when you come to the actual click to go to cut, it will be all on the same sheet, rather than spread across several mats because it thinks it's all different blues, for example. So there are a couple of things you can do still, even when you get to this stage, just to make things a little bit more economical for you. One of the things that you can do is you can actually move the elements around within the page on the mat itself. So you just drag and drop hold of one of the elements and move it. So that means if you've got a smaller piece of paper, you can move it into a different section so that you know it will fit. The other thing you can do is you can actually change the dimensions of the piece of paper that you're using, and the machine will automatically move the elements for you to fit into that size sheet. Now sometimes that might mean that it will go over onto another second sheet, so just be aware of that and decide which is best and most economical for you. Okay, so I'm using my iPad mini because I've saved the design on Cricut design space. It's available across all the devices that I can use it on. So I've paired my iPad with my Explore, and then I've just clicked go and it's brought up the screen with the mat, and then I click go again and it brought up this screen here. It's just telling me to set the Cricut Explore, which I've done, and then to load the mat, and then press go, and that's all on the machine now. Pretty much this will all be on the machine now. So I'm just going to put the first mat in. So because what I do is I put the colours on the screen similar to what I want to cut them in. That helps me when it comes to knowing what colour cardstock to put on the mat. So we know this is the red. It's nothing like red. The yellow. I'm just going to pop that in underneath the little catches there. I've already got the score tool in because later on I know I need that, and I just know I'm going to forget to put it in. And I've set it to Cardstock Plus, and then I'm just going to click the load mat, and then you click on that and it will start to cut. So I'm going to cut all these mats out and I will come back to you when it's all done. So here are all the pieces cut out. Doesn't it look amazing? There's so many there. So we've got Elsa up the top here, the snowflakes, our frames, and I've got several layers to that because I'm going to build them up, so I'm used to create just a little bit of added strength to the frame, and also the same with the sentiment there. So now we're going to start putting all these pieces together. So we're starting here with Olaf, and I'm just using my Cosmic Shimmer glue, which I find personally really great for sticking these elements down. It just gives you a little bit of movement time, but it also, once it's dry, is really strong, so it holds all the pieces together and it's unlikely to sort of fall apart in time. So for my little Olaf here, we've used this gorgeous sparkle cardstock, which I think really adds something to the iciness of the whole design. I think that this whole design really needs that glisten to it. You know, it's frozen after all, and so I think that really adds something to it without having to sit there and adding glitter yourself. The other cardstock is, as always, my American Crafts. I love cutting with American Crafts for the die cutting on the Cricut. It cuts really well. Now just there you were seeing I was putting the little black sort of coal pieces in for his buttons, as it were, and I started to put the white in first and then put the black over the top to try and give a little height, but it just didn't work, so I took it back out and put the black just straight into the little aperture piece there. And now we're adding the little brown pieces, which is his sort of twigs and things for his arms and all of that, which is kind of cute. And don't forget that with all these Disney cartridges, you do have like a black outline, so your main black part of your image is meant to be creating like a little border. You can see it particularly well on the little arms on the twigs where you've got that little border around, so don't worry and think you've done something wrong and have sort of missed that out. Now this is what I was talking about, where I've cut extra layers. So I've cut the name in the lovely sparkle white cardstock, and then I cut another layer in just a regular cardstock, and that's just giving it a little bit more thickness and a little bit more to make it like a actual sort of die cut elements, that like almost not quite as heavy as a chipboard piece, but getting that way. And again with this one I did the same. I've cut the white there just to sit under this yellow piece, so it will stick absolutely over the top. You won't see the white at all, but the yellow, being the American Crafts, it cuts really well, but it doesn't quite have enough strength. When I want it to sit up in the air and not sort of bend, I think it just needs that little bit of extra strength. And also I think it just makes it look a little bit more quality. I think it has a real nice effect. Now you saw there was a shiny piece of cardstock. This was a blue mirror card piece that I'd cut, and I was going to put that where I'd put that pale blue, but in the end I decided I didn't prefer it, so I'd cut both pieces so I could decide. So I used the pale spotty blue paper on the princess part there, and then I just used the little dots on the top of the crown. Now this is the mountain that is going to go on that backing piece of paper that we're using as our basis of all the elements on the Cricut design space. And if you recall, I said to you I had a paper pad that had the backing designs, splutter, of the Frozen movie, and what I did was I created this mountain so that it would sit as a correct size over that backing paper. This is the other part of it. This is the ice castle. Now this was a real pain. I spent a little bit of time actually before I sort of cut that bit out, but I spent quite a bit of time trying to work out what piece went where, and in the end I sort of did the obvious pieces first, and as I sort of put bits together it started to become clearer where things went and how they were meant to join up. But to start with it was a little bit confusing to see, and I'm using here my Zig two-way glue pen. It's a really good glue, but for these smaller pieces it's just a little bit easier to glue down with that. You can be a little bit more into sort of the smaller areas, whereas with the Cosmic Shimmer, as good as it is, if you squished it down it might sort of squidge out the sides, and that isn't really what I wanted to do on this. So there's just a little piece there and another piece down the side, and there is our little ice castle. So now we're going to work on Elsa. So I stuck down the face. Now this paper that I used for the face was, I don't know what company it's from, but it was already that colour. Now normally I would cut in white and then colour her in, because I think it's very hard to find a skin tone piece of paper. I really usually find that they're just too pink or too peach, so I usually, as I say, cut in white and then colour it with my markers. But I just came across this piece and it worked really well. So now I'm just adding her plaits, and you'll see there's sort of two little sort of starry shapes missing in the plait there along the top. Now this was actually meant to be, there was sort of like little white stars, like where she's doing her magic, I guess. I didn't want that on there, so I just took some scraps of yellow and I just stuck them in and cut the excess off the edge, and it worked fine and it covered those little holes. And so I was pleased with how that turned out, because just for me I didn't want that, and I don't think you'd have known. If I hadn't have said, I don't think you'd have told. So now we're adding her dress. And for this, it was quite important to make sure that we got all the different shades. So although I spoke about obviously minimizing the number of colors, I think for something like this, you do need to get the shading quite delicate so that you get the effect that you need to get by having that slight difference in shading. So we're adding her shoes here, and that's in the pale blue, so I'm just adding the toes part. And in order to add the back of the shoe, I'm not sticking that blue piece down, I'm just using it as a guide as to where that shoe sits. And the same again for the back of the other shoe, I just literally popped it down and then put my zig glue where the back of the shoe is to go, and then I put this piece down. I just wanted to be sure that I was positioning the shoes correctly. And the blue piece, now you could have put the bigger piece down first, but I just felt I was worried that I might put them in slightly the wrong place and then the back of the shoes wouldn't fit. So then we're putting her hands on. It's surprising actually, just as you put more and more pieces on, just how much it suddenly becomes more and more real, whereas when you start she looks kind of weird, her face and stuff. So for her sort of cape, shall we call it, I cut out this white cardstock, which we're putting on now, and then I've cut out a layer of this gorgeous sort of sparkle, sort of like an acetate, but it's almost not quite as heavy. It's not very heavy, but it's a very light acetate, as you can see there. Now in order to stick it, you can't just run glue over the back of it, because what would happen is you would see that glue through. So I always find with anything like acetate, anything clear like that, the way to get it so the glue doesn't show is to have even amount of glue across the whole lot. So to do that, and the easiest way to do that, is to put it through a glue runner like that Xyron, because then it is literally one piece of adhesive right across the back, and then you can't see the glue because there is no start and stop. So that I think looked really effective and made a real difference to that cape. But if you haven't got something like this acetate, then just put some adhesive on the white when you've stuck it down and literally throw 10 tons of glitter at it, and you will get a really good effect as well. Okay, so now to the frame, and you can see here how I'm building up several layers. Now again, you see there that mirror board, the plan was to offset it, the top layer, so that the mirror showed very slightly to the side. But when I did it, you can see there I'm just playing with it. When I did it, I just decided I didn't like it, and so I thought, well, we'll just pop the other one straight on top and no problem. And it gave a really nice strong frame. So now to the back of the wall hanging, I'm trying to think what you'd call it. I guess it's like a picture. This is almost like a photograph. You remember on the Cricut we created the little piece there that pops out. There we go. I actually said to you, oh, the diagonal is the fold, but it's actually the other way around. The straight piece is the fold and the diagonal's the cut. And then I've stuck 3 pieces together again just to get that weight. And then I wanted to add even more dimension, so I wanted some more thickness to the whole thing, and also for the whole thing to feel substantial. So I added this big foam piece to the back there. Now you saw I added glue to the whole lot, and of course I didn't want glue to the whole lot, so I quickly wiped it off where I didn't need it. And then where there's those little extra edges, I'm actually just taking some of that foam and just chopping it up and adding that around the edges. Now if I'd have thought about it in advance, if I'd have kind of been a little bit more organized, I would have probably put it over into one corner so that it would have been a bit easier. But anyway, not a problem. So now you can see it's all the way around, and then I'm going to add some of my glue gel to the whole lot. Now the reason I'm using glue gel is because it's really strong, and you want something that will really hold it, because you're going to be putting quite a bit of weight, and also foam is a bit of a more difficult surface to adhere to. So we've added the glue gel. I'll then add my backing piece there, and then the next thing I want to do is put my background piece of pattern paper down, and I need to work out where on the back there it needs to go so that it sits correctly through the aperture. So I just fiddled around with that, glued it down, then glued the aperture piece of paper down, again using my glue gel, but this time allowing it to give some height. So there is a photograph that I took when I put all the elements on the sheet there, just so that I could make sure that it all came together okay. And by photographing it, it just allows you to remember exactly how you had worked it out, and I find that always very helpful to do. So then I'd stuck that little mountain down onto the background there, and you can see how that fitted really well. You notice that I didn't in the end stick the whole mountain down because I decided it just covered too much of the image and it just spoilt it, and you know, the whole point is that that background image looked really cool. We then added the frame, again using glue gel, and then Elsa, again using glue gel. And you don't need to do a lot of more work with the glue gel, you hardly need to press it at all, you're not trying to squish it down or anything like that. So then I wanted to position my snowflakes. Now with the snowflakes, I just added glue gel onto the background paper once I knew where I was positioning them, and I literally just put one blob down and just put that center of the snowflake onto that blob. So all the edge pieces, which I know is unusual for me because I like to glue every element down normally, but all those little edge pieces of the sort of stalks, shall we say, of, I don't think snowflakes have stalks, but anyway, the sort of sticky out bits of the snowflake were actually knotted here. As you can see there, you can see it's just the center. Now when that glue gel actually completely dries, you are not going to see that little blob there. So that's all down really well. So the next thing we wanted to put down is our little Olaf, and again I'm using my pin flare glue gel, and I just find it so good. As I said, it's so strong, and also here I've got different heights. I've got the height where the frame is at one height, the feet is a different height, and then the background is even lower, so I can put glue gel down sort of a really big piece on his head and a slightly thinner piece on his feet, etc, etc. So that all helps. And then we're going to be adding the birthday princess, but I needed to sort of see where I wanted to put that sort of magic that was coming out of our hands before I stuck that down. So now with this one, it was a little bit more fiddly. I wasn't really sure how I was going to do this because I needed to use the glue gel because I needed the height because of the way that there's the aperture with the background and the birthday princess is overhanging that. So I had to fiddle around where I kind of just moved the glue gel. You can see just moving the bits that are slightly showing, and again I was just taking the view that on the whole, once it's dry, it will be clear enough that it's just not going to show. Long as you don't have like ridiculously massive bumps of it coming through, it shouldn't be too much of a problem, especially with something like this. I think with something that was really clean and simple, then you would see it, but I think for something like this, when there's just so much going on, you've just got that opportunity to probably hide it. And then also, if you notice where the biggest part was, where it was sort of showing perhaps the most, what I did was I put the magic over the top of it, so it disguised it just a little. And then I added down the other piece and the name, and then I felt that it really needed some more sparkles on it, so I've got these gorgeous sequins and beads, and I just literally tipped them out and stuck them down, and it was really as random as that, and it's all over the magic, all over every part. And then I'm adding some lovely glossy accents because I think that really makes a difference. And then I just started to think, I really need more sparkle on this. So I thought for her arms here, I would use the glossy accents and I would add in some glitter, because I noticed that in the dress, that was almost like a sheer top to the dress there. So I felt that that would kind of give that illusion. And then again on the ice castle, it's meant to be an ice castle, and yet it just looked really kind of flat. So again, I just added some glossy accents, which would show as shiny even if they didn't have the glitter on, so I felt that that would add something to it. Whereas on the dress here, on the main dress, I just added the Zig two-way glue pen and sprinkled the glitter on, because it gives a slightly different look. And now I took it outside once it was finished, because I really wanted you to see the finished design in the sun and just see how amazingly sparkly and glistening it was, because in that film you really couldn't see it. And you can see here on the back I just added some snowflakes, and then the actual inner part of that frame where the aperture was, I used that just to create somewhere to write a message or something. But I think, even if I say so myself, I think that has turned out absolutely stunning, and I just love all that sparkle. So that is today's card in inverted commas, and if you want to see a lot more photos, I took a whole heap of photos for you guys, loads of close-ups and stuff. So if you want to take a look at that and also extra information, etc., then do make sure, if you're on YouTube, that you go to the paragraph below this video, click show more, and then you will see a link that will take you to the corresponding blog post, and on there you will find all those photos, and trust me, it's definitely worth going to have a look. So that is it for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that you like the card. I'd love to hear your comments, so please do let me know what you think, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now. Bye!
You are the icing on my cake. You are the smile I can't replace. You are the way you smile, the way you laugh, the way I can't help but catch your joy, your joy. Metaphorically, this song just says one thing: I love you. That's what I'm telling you. I'm telling you.